Konnichiwa, and welcome to the Samurai Way, the podcast where we dive into the wisdom of the samurai, the art of Japanese living, and the philosophies that help us live with purpose and perseverance. I'm Lori Sagawa, and whether you're here to explore Bushido, uncover the meaning of Ikigai, or just looking for a little extra gambaru, never give up spirit in your daily life, you're in the right place. So grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's walk this path together. Are you ready? Let's begin. Konnichiwa, minasan. Hello, everyone, friends and warriors. I am so happy to be here with you today because we have a special guest. Her name is Carol Banens. Carol Banens is a certified grief educator, grief to gratitude coach, and published author who helps people navigate the emotional pain of loss with compassion, clarity, and support. Following the loss of her husband in 2018, Carol discovered healing through creative writing and poetry, transforming her grief into purpose. Her debut book, Kintsugi, Your Heart, The Art of Living with Grief, draws inspiration from the Japanese art of mending broken pottery with gold, symbolizing the beauty in brokenness and in the strength that comes with her unique gift and journey to find hope, gratitude, and meaning after loss. When she's not supporting others, Carol can be found with her head in a good book or at the piano, blending her love of classical music with a touch of jazz. So please help me welcome Carol Banens. So glad to have you here with us, Carol.
I'm so glad to be here, Laurie. Thank you for inviting me. Lovely to be here.
Yes, it is. And I'm fascinated by your story. If you'd like to just say a few words about yourself and how you got to where you are now, that would be great.
Absolutely, yes. The reason you mentioned jazz there is my late husband, Brian, was a well-known jazz pianist. And unfortunately, he was diagnosed with cancer in 2012, and we had that 6-year cancer journey, and he died in 2018. And I had never, ever considered grief. I don't know why. I'd lost my father, who I was very close to, but he was, well, he wasn't that old. Now I'm in my 60s. He was 73, but he was sick and he didn't have any quality of life. And I missed him, but I had no idea it would be like this when I lost my husband. It was a totally different grief for me. Everybody's grief is very different. And my background is that I was a physical therapist for 36 years at that point, and I was exhausted because what I did is I pushed all those emotions down, thought I could just keep going, very English, keep calm and carry on, which I did until I couldn't. And at 3 years, I moved jobs. I decided, no, I wasn't going to do that anymore. I couldn't hold space for people who were sick. I took time off and then decided to train as a grief educator and a grief coach, which is a bit strange really, because you're still holding pain, but it's a different pain. And I had found the journey very, very difficult, much more difficult than I had imagined, because I didn't know about it. We don't talk about it. And I started to write posts on social media, because that's what we do as we're trying to find clients and build up our visibility. And somebody said to me, your posts are they're quite poetic. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And I still had not really dealt with my grief. And in a couple of years afterwards, I wrote a post on Valentine's Day called Kintsugi, Your Heart. And I started writing poetry after that. And Kintsugi just seemed to fit very well for me with grief, because our hearts are shattered. They are shattered. So in my poetry book, it's, 3 parts. We have shattered, we have in pieces, and then we have making broken beautiful, because as anybody knows who's seen a pot that's been remade using the Kintsugi method of putting all those broken bits together with that beautiful gold, they're sometimes more beautiful than the original pot. And I was thinking, in grief, we have to put our hearts back together again. They're not going to be the same, but it doesn't mean they can't still be beautiful. And so I thought Kintsugi was a really wonderful way of thinking about grief.
And how did you come across Kintsugi?
I'm a reader, like you said, my
Oh,
head's in book.
okay,
I
you're a
read.
reader.
I'm always reading. So I don't know. I knew about Kintsugi and it just came to me. And I'm like, especially on Valentine's Day with our broken heart as a griever, I'm thinking, oh, Kintsugi, your heart. So that's where that came from, my idea of Kintsugi.
Well, that's
Would,
wonderful.
yeah, would you like me to read that poem? Because it
You,
just sort of,
that would be
thanks.
lovely. Yes.
All right, let me read that. So the actual book is Kintsugi Your Heart, The Art of Living with Grief. But this particular poem is Kintsugi Your Heart with Love. Your heart shattered into a million pieces, crushed by the weight of grief. You can't even imagine patching it up again, becoming whole. And yet it can be done, piece by little piece, gently, tenderly, lovingly. The Japanese art of kintsugi is putting broken pieces of pottery back together with glistening liquid gold, a beautiful way to restore something damaged. Could you imagine using the same principle to mend your broken heart, gently joining each piece not with gold but love? And as you do the grief work of learning to come back to love despite the pain, finding acceptance in where you are now, you can discover that your heart can be whole in its put together state. Because despite the obvious fault lines, there's still beauty in its imperfection. Now it's whole, but different.
That is beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you.
Have you ever
So
seen a Kintsugi exhibit? Have you ever
I
gone to
have
one?
not. I have
Oh,
not.
you
I would love to. I would love to do that. Yeah.
haven't.
But I think of the fault lines in our heart after we have grieved somebody we love. They're almost, I know we have glitter, this lovely gold, but really they're like the scars that bind our pieces together in our heart. And that can be the scars made of memories, of love, of compassion. And it just melds that heart together. And of course, nobody wants grief. Of course they don't. But it's going to happen to all of us. At some time, we're going to lose people we love, parents, grandparents, pets, husbands, wives, partners. And somehow we have to integrate these pieces. We have to integrate grief into our lives. So within that kintsugi is also grief. It's not just the lovely stuff. We integrate a little bit of grief into that because if you've loved, you're going to grieve.
Mhm. You also mentioned about courage. I'd love to hear your thoughts about courage and Kintsugi
Yeah.
and the Bushido Code.
Yes. Yeah.
Mhm.
Grief is a lot harder than I think we realize because we don't talk about it. Um, I've said, we've all lost somebody and it will affect us all differently. But for me, I found it really, really challenging because I had to get up, I had to go to work. You have to put one foot in front of the other. And so this is actually, yes, I'll read this because I think it'll tell you what I was thinking. Courage revealed, getting out of bed, taking one step after the other, day after day, small acts of courage. Looking at photos of your loved one, telling stories, sharing their life, small acts of courage. Sorting their clothes, donating and gifting that which was theirs, small acts of courage. Getting out of the house, meeting friends, going to a movie, small acts of courage. And as you day in, day out perform these small, almost insignificant actions, remember in your grief that this is courage revealed.
Mm.
And I think, again, we don't really realize the challenge of grief. Some people find it hard to get out of bed. I think we all do initially. But then, even having a shower, getting dressed, and then it's the courage of, oh, I've got to make my meal, or you have to go back to work. People here go back to work within 2 to 5 days. How on earth are you supposed to walk into your workplace? It takes courage. And it takes courage. I think we talked about integrity and honesty as well as part of the Bushido Code. And you might think, well, what's integrity got to do with grief? And I think it has a lot to do with grief because we tend to push our emotions down. We
Mhm.
pretend we're fine. Everyone says, how are you? And you go, oh, I'm fine. And you're dying inside. And we don't have that courage, that integrity to really be honest and say, you know what, actually, I'm struggling. This is hard. It's harder than I ever thought. That honesty about how we're feeling, because society now has sort of whitewashed it. It's like, get on, get back. We're in a quick pace. We don't have that time to grieve people. And if we've loved somebody, we're going to grieve them.
Mhm.
They used to dress in black for a year, didn't they? Or wear an armband, they'd have a year of mourning. And at least then you would know, you'd see somebody all in black, you would know that they've lost somebody they love. And you could respect that a little bit, respect their feelings. But I feel that we've lost a lot of that. And the expectation is that you move on, that you get back to normal. And of course, you really don't. You change. You're normal. It's
Mhm.
different if somebody you've loved has gone, whoever that is, it's different.
And everyone's path is different. I believe everyone say, oh, you should be like a week or a year, or
Mhm.
everybody's path is different. How do you encourage or counsel the women in your life that are grieving?
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
counsel? How do you work with them and to get
Yeah.
this is for everyone, really?
Yes. Yeah. Well, I think the first thing we do is we have to give ourselves permission to grieve, that
Mm,
space, that time, and permission to say no to people and say, I'm not ready to go out, or, I'm not feeling good today. One of the things that surprised me in grief is the lethargy of grief, the exhaustion that we feel.
mm,
And I think one of the things that is very helpful as I coach people is to give them an understanding of what's normal. So it's normal to feel this overwhelming tiredness because your brain is trying to process what's going on. This is not the norm. You expect somebody to walk in the door, and the brain's like, well, what's happening? So it takes energy for us to process what's going on. So we need to think about that. We need to give ourselves time to rest. Our body, we know that the day after losing a significant person, you're 21 times more likely to have a heart attack. And then 2 or 3 days after, you're supposed to go to work. So we have to really acknowledge that there are actual changes physically for us, not just emotional sadness. So I think when we understand that, people don't think, oh, I'm going crazy because I can't make a decision. Really exhausted. Old aches and pains come up. We've talked about aches and pains, you and I personally. And, the thing is about grief, you may have had an injury 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and all of a sudden you think, oh, that's very odd. My shoulder's hurting. Our inflammatory markers are increased. We have decreased immunity. So grief is much more profound. It affects every aspect of our lives. And I think when we understand that, then we can give ourselves that permission to grieve and rest. Because otherwise, I think people think I'm being lazy, or I should. I should be better. I should be moving on. I should be able to do everything that I did before. Think about people in business, people who are used to making snap decisions, who may be CEOs or anybody who has to really make a decision that affects a whole team. Their mind is not functioning. We know that for a month after a significant loss, you're functioning at about 25%. When you're back at work 3 days later, how are you functioning? Six
I
months
do.
later,
I have a
go on.
question to ask you. You know,
Yes,
you were
please.
a physical therapist for most of
Yep,
your life, or a good part of
yep,
your adult life.
yep.
Do you see any correlations, or can you figure out why some people just the pain or their problems kept persisting, where others just seem to go on? Do you have any thoughts about that?
I think a multiple, whether it's grief or pain, because let's face it, grief is pain, isn't it? We have to look at our nervous system. How has our nervous system been set really through our lives? How safe do we feel? We need to look at our attachment. Did we have secure attachments in the past? So if you are somebody who is grieving right now, let's say you didn't have a very attentive parent, maybe there was abuse going on, that sense of safety is not there. And now somebody, and they leave you, and then something like grief happens, and it feels like it's happening all over again, and your sense of safety has been taken away. And so we
Mhm.
have to look back at how does that affect you, but we look at your physical and mental health. If somebody has already had depression or anxiety or any sort of mental health issue, grief is going to magnify that. How did your person die? Was it a peaceful going to sleep at age 90? Was it a death by suicide, by addiction? Was it a traumatic road accident? Was it a long drawn out cancer or Alzheimer's? That's going to affect the way that you grieve. Have you been a caregiver for the last 6 years? And then all of a sudden, there's all this free time when your person's there and you're thinking, oh, I better check. Oh, they're not there. So all of these things when you're grieving make a difference. The same with pain, I would say, is what is your nervous system looking at a threat? So if somebody has chronic pain, we're looking at, do they have a supportive workplace, for example? Are they able to go back to modified work where people are understanding and saying, just do a desk job for now, no heavy lifting? Do they feel supported? We look at the support network. But our nervous system is always looking out for threats. That doesn't feel safe. If it doesn't feel safe, what action do I have to take? So we have to teach people how to create a sense of safety within themselves, whether that's mindfulness, meditation, journaling, and feeling it, doing the really uncomfortable and feeling the emotions, because it is uncomfortable to feel sad, to feel bereft, to feel angry. Sometimes we're angry in grief or a lot of guilt. And maybe these are emotions that we've never felt before. And all of a sudden we're like, well, wait a minute, I'm feeling angry. That's not me. I'm angry at the medical staff. I'm angry at my person for dying. As strange as that is, it's very common. And then you start to talk to yourself badly. I shouldn't do this and I shouldn't do that. So I think grace is a word I come up with. You have to give
Uh-huh.
yourself grace.
Grace.
You have to have self-compassion. You have to offer grace to those around you because they just don't know. They don't know unless they have had grief. And so we give grace to ourselves. We give grace to others when they say the stupidest things, meaning to just fill in the space, but not knowing what to say, we give grace. So that's my sort of rounder. I don't know if I quite answered your question, but
Oh
when
yeah,
when
you have
I did,
because
yeah,
you did because I think it's everything is connected. I believe,
yes,
even though you're talking about death and kintsugi, it's connected to the Bushido code. But as a former physical therapist,
mhm.
I was wondering if you saw the connections with former
Absolutely,
patients.
yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of chronic pain when, I also did myofascial release and craniosacral therapy. And so when you have your hands on a patient, sometimes emotions come up that have nothing
Mhm.
to do with their back pain or their shoulder pain. Long ago, things that have been held stuck in the body, we know that the body keeps score. And so, how do we allow those emotions? How do we feel them? And it's this felt sense that we have to go into that can be so challenging for people because the temptation, of course, is I don't want to feel pain. I will do anything other than feel pain. And so people can get busy. Certainly in grief, they'll get busy, they'll distract, they'll numb out, they'll have one or two or three or four glasses of wine where maybe they would only have one before. They maybe watch too much TV, anything to distract themselves. And chronic pain, you could do the same. You're going to get, you don't move as much because you're frightened. You take more pills. You again might take stuff, anything to not feel it. But what we know is that if we can allow the feeling, if we can be brave enough to sit with some of this uncomfortableness, actually it softens.
Mhm.
The thing about pushing away, we all know the thing when I say don't think of a pink elephant. Laurie, do not think of a pink elephant in the next. Don't think of a pink elephant. All you're thinking about is a pink elephant,
Pink elephant.
right? And so when we have pain and we're like, don't think about my loss, don't think about the pain. I know I don't have, no, don't think about it. It persists, resisting
Mhm.
persists. So It's about supporting people in a safe, non-judgmental environment where they can feel these difficult emotions, where they can express them and understand them, that I think is part of their healing journey.
Mm, well, that's beautiful. The reason I asked you that is what
Mm.
I think you know, I am a traumatic brain injury
Yeah.
survivor. And then while I was recovering, my physical therapist had never heard of hyperacusis. And she said, well, said, I went to a seminar, you know, they have, you know, about
Yeah.
we
Yeah, of course.
continuing education. She said,
Yeah.
you know what we talked about and what we practice? She goes, hyperacusis. Would you like to be my first patient? And I said, oh, yes, please. Because the alternative to that, the ENT said there are clinics in Portland and on the East Coast. You can go to them, get tested, get a machine, which would be between $2,000 and $10,000, and then having to wear that daily. And I'm thinking, oh no, I can't do it. One more
No,
thing.
thank you, right?
Yeah, so when she did that, it took about 7 sessions. It was wonderful. And, you know, it was unfortunately she sold her practice and no one's taken her place. But while I was one of her patients, she helped me work through hyperacusis.
Yeah. Yeah. And pain is so, or pain, if I come back to pain, because that's what I dealt with, the chronic pain clients. And it's really difficult because we all want an easy answer. Listen, I'm sitting here with a hot pack on my back. I've got terrible back pain right now. And if you could give me one pill to take it away, I would be, yes, please. I've already taken several Tylenol. And I think, when pain goes on and on, not just for a week, but months and years, it is draining and it's
Mhm.
exhausting. And of course, people would love an easy answer, and there isn't an easy answer. It's about reprogramming, using neuroplasticity in the
Yes.
brain, in the nervous system, to help create more of a sense of safety and a sense of calm. And I think in grief, our sense of safety is really shaken, especially if it's a partner. You're so used to relating in the world with that partner. I just did a grief cafe today, and somebody said, I married very young. We were together 50 years. Every decision I made was made in relation to my husband. And now that he's gone, making a decision by myself is really challenging. Is it right?
Mm,
I don't have to think of him anymore. So it changes our whole sense of self when that person has gone.
mhm.
And that's where that rebuilding and pulling the pieces together to make our kintsugi, the
Right.
difference to making beautiful, pulling them together to make yourself whole again. But it takes time. It's
It
work.
does. That was one of the first thing I wrote a short paper about it, and I referred to it as like Humpty Dumpty. This was way back in '07, '08. I talked about how my pieces were being put back together. My life was shattered
Yeah.
like a
Yes.
window with a ball thrown through it, and just putting your life back together. You know, it can be done. And what I love about you, Carol, is that you are
Mm.
going to be starting a community for women. Would you like to share a bit about that?
I am. I'm so excited. I am partnering up with Lisa McFarland, and in January, we have a community that's starting up called the Grief Gurus. And this is a community. I know, it's a community-based, subscription-based, and we're very excited. In fact, I'm announcing it here before we even announce it, but I'm going to announce it anyway. And it's going to be where women can come together. It will be specifically for women right now who've experienced loss. And Lisa and I will be doing meditations and mindfulness and teachings on grief. And I should say, the most important part is having your grief witnessed, to have it heard, and to share it with
Mm,
people that understand. And I
yes.
really understand this from my grief cafe this morning. I had 8 different people sharing all about their losses and talking. I did very little talking, they did all of it. And they messaged me afterwards saying, this was so helpful, this was so supportive. So Lisa and I really want to create that sort of community where we have guest speakers, where we help and we interact and we come together to support one another for however long is needed. And I think the important thing is also that grief counseling, grief coaching is not always accessible to people. It's expensive. And so we wanted to bring something in that is going to be at a reasonable price. We'll announce it in no, in December, um, just so that people have access to support. So we're very, very excited about that. I think healing begins in community, in connection.
Yes. Hmm. Well, what we'll do, Carol, is put in the description below
Yeah,
your contact information and how they can get a hold of you about
yeah,
if you're grieving.
yeah,
Or
absolutely.
have you ever have you ever thought about people knowing that their partner or spouse is going to pass away? Are they invited as well?
Absolutely. I have a client who's going through that right now, anticipatory grief. How do we cope with that? And it's very interesting. When I was going through that, I didn't know it was anticipatory grief. I didn't know. I didn't know anything about grief while Brian was going on his journey. And the reality is, when somebody gets a terminal diagnosis, those around them start to grieve.
Hmm.
Anticipatory grief. So, how can we support people on that journey so that they know a little bit more what to expect
Hmm.
when it
Wonderful.
happens?
Hmm.
Even though they might know what to expect, it's still a shock and they may still feel ill prepared, but at least they know, about the lethargy, the physicality, the cognitive issues. At least they don't think they're going nutty when all of this suddenly hits them, because you do. You think, wait a minute, I was always able to make a decision. What's going on? I couldn't read. I love reading. Why couldn't I read? Because we couldn't focus.
Hmm.
So yes, absolutely. And yeah, so people are welcome to contact me, come to the Grief Cafe. That's a free online cafe I do on the first Thursday of every month. Super supportive. And I do free
Hmm.
workshops every month as well. So there are
It would be
lots of
great
ways.
for
And of course I coach. Hmm?
all of you that are interested or know of somebody in the grieving process. This would be a great resource for you. So please look into the information in the comments after this episode is published, goes live. And Carol, it's been wonderful speaking with you about Kintsugi and how Kintsugi actually it's not just Kintsugi has so many parts to it. And we brought in the Kodo about courage, the courage to say, I'm not doing well. And actually that's integrity too. And when you say,
Yeah.
oh, I'm fine, where maybe you're not fine. So uh, I'm really thrilled to have found Carol and have been connected with her to bring this information to the samurai community in the samurai way. So do you have any parting thoughts, Carol, before we wrap up?
Well, thank you for inviting me. I would say reach out if you don't have support. You do not want to do your grief alone. I tried that. It didn't work very well for me. So I would say, do reach out. It's a challenging journey, but there are things that we can do to offer support. And if you just want to chat, just email me. All of that information Laurie will provide after the episodes.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Carol. And that's going to be a wrap for today. I really appreciate every one of you who are here listening to how the Kodo can affect your life. And I say often that if people really adhere to the Kodo we would be more like Japan. You wouldn't have stealing, you wouldn't have looting. There's no tipping in Japan. People are very kind. They're always, in fact, I just love Japan. It's my happy place. And so that's why I'm bringing this to people that unfortunately maybe can't visit Japan, but you can understand the essence of Japan through the Kodo and how the samurai shaped the history and the nation of Japan. So that's a wrap for today. And I'm going to say thank you so much. Please subscribe, like, and share with your friends about the Samurai Way podcast so we can help and educate and inspire other people. So that's a wrap for today. Thank you so much, Carol Banens. It's been wonderful speaking with you. I actually learned a lot. So thank
Oh,
you.
good.
I'm sure
Welcome.
the audience will learn too. So that's a wrap for today. And I'll say mata ne, goodbye, and see you later. And that's a wrap for today's episode, The Samurai Way. I hope you found a little inspiration, a new perspective, or just something to reflect upon as you go about your day. Now remember, the samurai spirit isn't just about history. It's about how you show up, face challenges, and live with purpose. Whether it's Ikigai guiding your path or a little extra Gambaru pushing you forward, keep walking strong. So if you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, share, or leave a review. It really helps. And if you've got some thoughts, questions, or you just want to connect, just contact me. So until next time, stay focused, stay determined, and keep living with purpose. Mata ne.